You are listening to the IoT For All Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT For All Podcast. I'm your host, Raullen Chai, and on today's episode, we have Raullen Chai, the CEO and co-founder of IoTeX. If you've pretty much been paying attention to anything that has to do with Web3, blockchain, IoT, you've probably heard of IoTeX. They're a very fascinating and interesting company focused on leading decentralized network that they've built to power the future of Web3 and machine economy that they call MachineFi. So we talk about what MachineFi is, talk about Web3, kind of how it all fits together, the role it plays in IoT. We also talk about a lot of the intricate details of how it works, what proof of anything kind of means, security implications of it all, the hardware side of things, and just kind of what the future, not just for IoTeX itself, but also for the future of IoT and how this decentralized kind of machine economy can work and what it would actually enable. So a very, very fascinating episode. I promise you'll find a lot of value and hopefully it excites you at the same time because the potential here is very interesting to kind of dive into and explore. Before we do that, if any of you out there are looking to enter the fast-growing and profitable IoT market, but don't know where to start, check out our sponsor, Leverage. Leverage's IoT solutions development platform provides everything you need to create turnkey IoT products that you can white label and resell under your own brand. To learn more, go to iotchangeseverything.com. That's iotchangeseverything.com. And without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the IoT For All podcast. Welcome, Raullen, to the IoT For All show. Thanks for being here this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We've been, I've spoken to Larry before on the podcast, and we've had some really good conversations. And you guys have a lot of exciting stuff going on in the industry, so I'm excited to have this chat.
Yeah, sure. Same wise. We have lots of things to share.
Awesome. So let's start off by having you give a quick introduction about yourself, background, experience, anything you think would be relevant for our audience.
Of course. So my name is Raullen Chai. I'm the CEO and co-founder of IoTeX. So we started back off in 2017. Actually, has been 4 more years. How time flies. Before that, I was actually leading like a team at Uber, basically doing things around security and privacy, because at that time Uber was like growing like crazy. Lots of privacy and security challenges over there. And even before that, I spent almost 5 years at Google, basically leading teams for Google-wide security initiatives as well as cloud products. Some of the cloud products, like my team, they still earns Google like $10 million a year.
Okay.
Pretty impressive. And even before that, I was doing my Ph.D. in Waterloo in Canada, focused on cryptography. So that's where I got into blockchain like really early, because Bitcoin white paper is like a natural thing, right? For like anyone who's very interested in cryptography. I mean, so that's why like I got into like a Bitcoin community very early at those days.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that'll definitely tie into kind of IoTeX in a second here. So dive in a little bit to what the company is, what your focus is on, and kind of how you're helping and working with the industry.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect question. So definitely like for IoTeX, we started in 2017, 2 other co-founders, very small team, just a white paper, just illustrate our vision for the future. So basically you see like as, machine grows, as AI, 5G and every technology grows, the machine becomes more like a more intelligent, and definitely like there will be the future workforce for the world, right? According to McKinsey report, I think there is a recent report. So they say like by 2030 there will be 100 billion machines, producing like a 12 trillion kind of values for the economic growth and replacing 30% of human jobs. Definitely like the machines are the future. And if you think about it, right, so machines cannot work individually, so they have to work with each other to exchange information or utility in a way. So, kind of forming like a, different layers of machine network trying to, help the human in all means, right? So, of course, like, there are communication technology, there are some other kind of AI technology that helps the machine to get there. But I think the most important thing that is lacking or missing here is like this economic layer. Basically like a human being, right? So if you want to get to be part of the society, you have to exchange something with other human being, right? Like you produce like a bread in exchange for like a milk type of thing. The same thing applies to the machine, but we don't see kind of like economic layer there yet. So that's why like IoTeX was born with this kind of vision and mission. Like we want to build this economic layer for machines so they can work together, right? And also this economic layer cannot be a centralized company. If you think about if Tesla, so they have a huge like a machine network, basically it's a car machine network. Uh, and if this network is actually controlled by Tesla, then it's kind of very scary to think about even, right? So like maybe the Elon Musk want to have somebody disappear so he can just push a button and it's all gone. So that's why like this layer has to be like a decentralized and
Mm.
also have like the machine owners to own that piece of like a functionality or utility within that network.
So when you say decentralized, talk about what that exactly means and kind of how that compares to the way things are done now.
Yeah, so like I said, like current situation is like kind of big companies, they have a lot of machines. So they kind of
Hmm.
forming the machine networks by using the centralized company. I think
Okay.
Tesla is an example, like Apple is another example, Amazon, Google, I think you name it.
Sure.
But in the future, I feel like there should be some democratization of like the machines in the future, right? Not any, those big guys can do a giant machine network. There should be some kind of bottom up type of machine network, like all the Raspberry Pi, for example, in this world.
Okay.
If they can connect it all together to form some sort of, I don't know, like maybe a web crawling network, that should be the way for it. Or another example should be like a Arduino, like a Arduino sensors, like a weather stations. Like those things can actually be distributed. Maybe each household has a weather station outside of their house, and all the weather stations should be able to connect it in a way so they can exchange information, also trying to earn some like credits in a way.
Gotcha. Okay. And just out of curiosity, so in order for that to exist, you would need someone to build the hardware and kind of put money in towards that part of the process. How would that work with a decentralized kind of network for machines?
Oh, so this is totally like a game changer, right? Like I talk with a lot of IoT companies. I think like a very big pain point for this company is hardware is hard. There will
Mm.
be like a huge upfront, like a capital cost, basically to set up a machine network. For example, if you would want to do like a share bike sharing, like a scooter sharing
Hmm.
type of machine network, it's a huge like upfront cost, which definitely like stop lots of those machine networks from being happening actually. But by having Web3 um, primitives, I think that the story will be total different because
Mm.
it's not like the company who's managing all the bikes, for this machine network. It's actually like the people like you and me, who's invest in maybe some tokens to.
Mm.
I'm sorry, they are actually investing their monies to buy a bike or like a build a bike and put into
Okay.
use, trying to earn some sort of like a token incentives, right? And this token, of course, will be able to governance the entire like a scooter network or bike network once it's just big enough. So like this paradigm has been shifted from one company spent a ton of money to build like a one machine
Right.
network to many people, like a billions of people work together to build like a one machine network.
Gotcha. Okay, so this plays into all the stuff I've been reading on when we're hearing MachineFi and things like that. Correct? Kind of this is
Yeah,
all kind of encompassing that.
exactly. That's a essence of MachineFi.
Okay, so what I'm curious to hear about then is how MachineFi kind of fits in with how you all view IoT now, and kind of like the status quo of the industry, and how that when then you start thinking about Web3
Mhm.
plays into where IoT potentially can go, or what this kind of unlocks for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I do think this economic layer, like the MachineFi, basically where built is the last missing piece for IoT to fly, right?
Okay.
So in the past few years, we have lots of progress in sensor technology, in chips, in hardware
Right.
manufacturing, in 5G, you name it. But I think still like the economic layer is missing here. Like who's putting in the incentives for people, for developers, for IoT hackers, to just launch their stuff and grow their stuff, right? I think that's kind of like a big missing piece right now. I think what we're doing is trying to connecting those IoT company developers and community to the entire crypto world, like the Web3, even token developers, right? Who's very specialized in design those incentives. And if they can do this in the Web3 space, definitely like they can give like a 10x, 100x to those device companies in the IoT
Mm.
world.
And So I guess what I'd like to hear a little bit about is if you could, we've talked about the scooter kind of idea. Talk
Mhm.
about some other examples. Like what has actually on your end,
Yeah,
what have you rolled out? Where do things stand as far as what are some applications that people could maybe
definitely.
put connect this all together to understand at a basic level how it works?
Yeah. So let me give you like a few kind of success stories we have, right? So I think one thing is we have this GPS tracker, like we did in-house, it's just try to prove and validate the
Hmm.
market. It's a GPS tracker plus other 16 sensors, basically track like the movement and location, everything um, for like an object. So we put this one on cross supply, which is a Kickstarter for like
Yep.
hardware, like a few months ago, and we did an A/B test. So
Okay.
if we go with a MachineFi with a token with the incentives, we can sell like 10x compared to a traditional like a GPS tracker just put on there, right? So that means the incentive theory does work. So this is
Okay.
like one. And then so we actually finished this device like a few weeks back and launched this one recently. So there are already two teams working on like a very interesting like a token project trying to even will promote like sales of this GPS tracker further. So one is this thing called like a health blocks. It's basically like a kind of fitness to earn, right? So if you walk
Okay.
10 steps every day, you earn some sort of token. And if you maybe play basketball with your friends, for a certain amount of time, you're also earning token. So it's a very interesting project. Why this can happen on IoTeX? Because we have the full stack, from like a tracking device to the
Hmm.
layer 2 protocol, which we call true stream, processing all the data without compromising privacy, and to the layer 1 blockchain smart contract, basically to earn the token back to the owner of the device.
And
Yeah.
what is the value of the token for the individual?
Yeah, the value of the token for individual is of course like the value carries some sort of like a speculative value as well as like a real value, right?
Okay.
In the short term, I think maybe speculative value accounts for like a 80% because everyone expects this machine network will grow, so they're
Right.
actually holding a token. And in the long run, once we have like enough data points, from people who's doing fitness, those kind of thing become very valuable by itself. For example, like you can have this data kind of rent out to research institutions, of
Hmm.
course, like without compromise users' privacy. You can have the data actually even share with other people. For example, like a Michael Jordan, right? So his fitness like data would be very interesting to people who wants to collect, or like to his fans, for example.
Sure.
Yeah, I think lots of design space over there.
So when it comes to kind of this, being able to prove that the person who's receiving the incentive is actually the one utilizing the device, how is that kind of handled? And I'm curious what kind of problems that could cause. And what I'm kind of getting at is there's obviously the risk of kind of spoofing
Hmm.
by let's say you have a fitness tracker and your insurance is going to bring down the cost if you walk x number of steps, so your tracker is tracking the steps but you're not going to go walk, so you give it to a friend of yours who is very active and goes for runs every day and they give it back to you. How is that kind of situation handled, protected against, or just what is your view on the kind of that spoofing side when you get to proof of anything
That's a
type
great question.
atmosphere?
Great question. I think there are usually like two ways to basically fight against with the spoofing, right? So I think one is of course you do some very hard tech on the sensor. For
Hmm.
example, for the sensor we have like a secure chip over there, meaning like the moment the sensor collects all the information or data, like the data gets signed by the secure chip, like no one can tamper in the middle. So that's kind of like a hardcore approach to make it happen, which we use
Okay.
for now. Another one is more like a game theoretic approach. So basically says if you're cheating, right? Someone else will try to find the signal, like the proof you're cheating, and trying to basically tell the protocol like you're cheating and trying to win the reward back. And if
Okay.
the protocol finds you're cheating, you're getting like a slash or in a way.
Okay.
I think this is like a more long-term goal. So there are some game theoretic
Gotcha.
things we should design, yeah, over time.
Makes sense. Okay, great. And now the other one of the other question I was thinking about was on the data privacy side or data security side of things.
Yeah,
When you're getting involved with the blockchain, obviously there's when you think about the blockchain being effectively a shared database that has the advantages of decentralization and trust, but also has disadvantages when it comes to performance and cost.
yeah.
How do you kind of decide and determine what data is stored on and off on or off chain? And what are your thoughts on kind of how blockchain technology in general will
Mhm.
improve so that everything can be stored on chain.
Yeah. When we're talking about like an IoT device, there is just huge amount of data. So different not going to store on our layer one blockchain. So
Okay.
for now we have this layer two protocol. It's more like a computation oracle that holds all the data for a
Mm,
period of time, like a 30 days or 60 days, right?
okay.
It's up to the user. And all the proof that gets generated by this data, for example, Raullen has maybe done 10K steps every day. Like this is a proof. Like this proof actually goes to the smart contract. So it's
Hmm.
not smart contract understands, oh, he has been done this, give him token, right?
Okay.
So that's a knowledge behind the tech.
And do you feel like this will evolve to where everything will be kind of on chain, or will the Oracle piece kind of still play in? Like, is it more of a hybrid approach, kind of as things grow, where the more secure stuff is being stored um, on chain, and or certain things are being stored on chain, and then the other stuff is stored off chain from just depending on kind of the security needed and the cost side, the performance requirements, and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think like a 99% of data should just like cache on layer two, which are our true stream computational oracle, while like just a little bit of data, which is the proof itself, can
Hmm.
go to the layer one blockchain. That's definitely like the sum of rule, right? So
Right.
yeah.
And the question I have about hardware. So hardware has always been an interesting topic to talk about because it's not always been the easiest thing to build. It's expensive at times. It can be expensive. Design. There's testing involved. Getting the different components that you need. Manufacture. You just name it. Like there's always. It seems like for whatever reason, hardware brings a lot of hiccups and potential headaches to IoT solutions. So for all the hardware manufacturers that are kind of listening to this or that you communicate with, what would you say is the reason for them to explore working with and integrating into IoTeX, and kind of what does that
Yeah,
look like? How do they do that?
I really like this question. I think we talk with lots of IoT developers, right? So one
Okay,
of the pain point or complaints they have is they have a great idea. They even can do some POC, but like they cannot grow their products from 0 to 1, let alone like a 1 to 100, right? I think like of our value prop here, or like how we can help them is like we can help you guys in having this kind of growth, like a growth hack or like a growth strategy, basically having
hmm,
a token in a way to incentivize people to use the thing you build.
sure, sure.
um, yeah, then that story would be very different.
And what do hardware companies and manufacturers need to do to be able to integrate in with
Mhm.
what you're doing at IoTeX? Is that something that's easy to do? Is there a certain stage at which they need to be engaging with you? How do they? Is that something they don't even need to engage with you to do? Like what does that process look like, and how's
Yeah.
that projected to be handled kind of as you grow?
Yeah, that's a hard question because like the IoT like devices have a very different form factors.
Okay,
Um, but we tried our best to make the like entire onboarding process like as smooth as possible. So
sure.
for like usually devices, like a Raspberry Pi Arduino, so we do provide SDK, so they can just like have IoTeX SDK over there, so their device can talk with our chain and layer two seamlessly. So this
Okay,
is one way to go. Another thing is like this smart ring is like for very small and tiny devices, they cannot, right? So because it's almost impossible to stuff another software within that like a very
sure,
embedded device. So yeah,
sure.
we provide like a API different like for those devices to talk to.
Gotcha. Okay, great. One of the last questions I want to ask before we kind of wrap up is just about the company as a whole. It's a very very interesting kind of approach and strategy, and just you're just looking at this from a whole different way, which is super interesting to kind of follow. I've watched a lot of the live streams you've had. I read a lot of the documentation you put out, and it's very captivating stuff, to be honest. Like even if you're not familiar with blockchain or Web3, and but just understanding
Hmm.
what the vision is super interesting. So take me through kind of what the next 6 to 12 months look like for you all, and what the audience can kind of expect and be on the lookout for.
Yeah, I think there are three concrete things we are working on, right? So first, of course, we are still like a polish the infrastructure to make it like as explicit as possible, as
Okay.
simple as possible for like the developers to actually onboard. So that's kind of like a tech work we're still building. And we actually, I personally spend a lot of time on the BD side, basically trying to talk with companies, IoT companies and developers, and understand what do they need and how can we help. So
Sure.
definitely this year we are going to onboard quite a few IoT companies onto IoTeX, to use
Right.
our platform to try to practice our theory. And the third one, I think that's on the product side, something we call MachineFi Marketplace. Will hopefully, in Q2, I think we will launch this one in Q2. So what does it do is, so we will have a kind of devices here, and we will have like a token projects and a Web3 developer on the other side. Then you just trying to launch like a new kind of project. It's like the analogy here is if you have NFT, so you have an NFT marketplace like an
Sure.
OpenSea, right? But if you have a MachineFi project, so you can have like a coming to the MachineFi marketplace to actually launch your project. It's a
Mm.
Kickstarter, but definitely like a fully embraced with Web3.
And what's the best way for people out there who are interested in learning a little bit more about kind of how this all works, how it may affect their business, what they can do to get involved? What's the best way to kind of stay up to date, digest information now, and just kind of learn more?
Sure. Please go to IoTEX.io and MachineFi.com for these two websites to learn more about what we're doing. And if you definitely if you're interested in talking with us, just shoot me an email. It's a Raullen RAULLEN at IoTEX.com. Sorry, IoTEX.io.
Fantastic. Well,
Mhm.
I'll tell you, this is one of a conversation I've been looking to have or looking forward to have for a while now. After I kind of been learning a lot about what you all do,
Right.
so thank you so much for taking the time. I'm excited to kind of see how things progress, and hopefully, maybe later this year, as things continue to roll out, you have more companies working with you and more applications. We can have you back on to talk more about some real life things that can just kind of paint even more of a clear picture on how this is kind of leading into the future.
Okay, that's perfect, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks again for watching that episode of the IoT For All podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please click the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to hit the bell notification so you get the latest episodes as soon as they become available. Other than that, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.